You are now listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
Groovy. There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Great God, get away!
Welcome to the House by the Video Store podcast. I am your host, William, and joining me today will be
Sean.
Derek.
And in this episode, we'll talk about the Scream series, parts 1 through 4, the Wes Craven series of movies where teens get killed in a meta-ironic way. But before we get to that, I can discuss some what we've been watching and some news. Just to start off with some news, the video I put out last week was the similarities between Aliens, the 1986 James Cameron directed movie in the Aliens franchise, and Halo, the 2001 game released on the Xbox. You may be asking why I'm comparing a movie from 86 to a game from 2001 when we're in 2015. And it's mostly just because as soon as the game came out, I thought those were very obvious parallels between that game and the movie. And checked YouTube, nobody else had a video out about it, so I made one. And then I found out why there are no videos about it, because we put it out. It didn't get flagged by the Content ID system. It did pretty well. It started getting some views. Then actually, Bloody Disgusting posted it, posted a quick article about it. And then it got blocked worldwide by Fox. And now it's unviewable on YouTube, but it's up on Vimeo if you still want to watch it. So you can go to the site, House by the Video Store, just go to our Vimeo and watch it. But it's
And that's 2 weeks in a row that Fox has blocked some of our content, so we've had nothing on our YouTube page aside from the podcast.
And then the thing that makes it so infuriating is you go on YouTube and you search for like Aliens, and there's a video they uploaded like 8 years ago that's like 5 minutes of uncut footage from the movie, and it's still up. So it's like, just because nobody's, and some of that stuff has decent view counts.
Yeah.
So it's
weird.
It's crap. It makes you kind of pisses you off, really.
So it makes me wonder, like, do they just have somebody that goes around looking for that shit that they find?
It's an automatic system.
Automatic system. Oh,
yeah, they have an automated system. I think we discussed it last week, not to get too much back in the sausage, as they say. But it just automatically compares everything you upload to a database of content that all the major providers like Fox, Universal, all the big studios upload their content. In this case, it didn't get flagged initially, but I'm pretty sure that the fact that Bloody Disgusting had an article about it, even though it was like a relatively small article that wasn't like a main page thing, I guess that since that was out there, somebody from Fox saw it and then they flagged it. The dispute process...
Or they for some reason the title, maybe it starts pulling from titles and like goes in deeper, and that's why it wasn't flagged initially.
So like I said, you can still see it on Vimeo, but the dispute process is kind of funny because if you dispute a content ID saying it's fair use, which in this case it obviously is fair use because it's comparing one movie to a game and the similarities. If you do that, the person who gets to decide if it's fair use or not is the content owner, so Fox. And why would they have any incentive to let you keep playing their video?
Yeah.
And then they can also sue you, so yay.
Well, back to
And real quick, if anybody listening has a site or a YouTube channel that has posted content similar to ours and disputed it and worked with them, let us know because we want to know how that works. We don't know if we want to risk disputing it right now for that reason, just so they don't try to, sue us or whatever. But yeah, if anybody has any experience or knows anybody, shoot us an email. Any of our names at housebythevideostore.com. So you can shoot it to William since he deals with a lot of that and has had to deal a lot with that Fox stuff.
Yep. So that was the video we released, kind of. It was out there for a couple of days. But other news, Betsy Palmer passed away, and she was, of course, Pamela Voorhees in the Friday the 13th film. And I think she was in flashbacks of part 2. So it's always sad when you see, it seems like recently in the past, few months, there's been a lot of people who are involved with the horror genre dying.
Especially the kind of the original boom of it too, that first wave of people that were involved in those earlier films. It's kind of becoming the end of an era,
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's also just makes sense as those people who played those parts are getting up there in the age.
Yeah.
But it's always sad. Like I said, most people would recognize her, at least for who are fans of our stuff, as Pamela Voorhees. I'm surprised that as much as these movie studios today like to do prequels and all that shit, I'm surprised nobody's wanted to make like a Pamela Voorhees origin story.
Well, I think that has like the possibilities to be interesting, but I think now that Friday the 13th is just so affiliated with Jason that it would probably be hard to sell it to an audience, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Where I think you could probably make that a way more interesting movie than just rehashing just another Friday the 13th with Jason, but I don't know, because you could probably find some. It could probably be really good. I just don't think they'll probably ever revisit her character ever again. I just don't see him doing it anymore.
It'll just be a small part of a movie that involves Jason, kind of what they did with the 2009 reboot of the franchise or sequel remake.
Or an episode out of the new TV show they're supposed to make, you know?
Yeah.
That might be pretty good. A little campfire tale or something.
Yep, so that was a bit of sad news. Other more upbeat news, Starz released a very short teaser, it's about 20 seconds, of Ash vs. Evil Dead. Did everybody get to see this?
Yeah,
I haven't seen it yet.
I mean, you don't really miss anything. It just shows like a chainsaw with blood dripping off of it, and you hear Ash, and then the chainsaw starts. But it's good to see.
Really, the end of the Evil Dead remake, Ash and that was more exciting, and it was like it was just a little bit more than this, though. You actually got to see his face. But this could have been anybody. Like a fan could have made this essentially. I mean, it looks good, but a fan could have made this and just used a voiceover from a film, and nobody would have known the difference. Like there's nothing new really. You know, you just hear his voice, and you see the chainsaw, but you don't see any of his face or whatever. They kind of keep it hidden, so nothing. It's exciting, but at the same time, nothing too mind blowing.
Well, and for all we know, it could be Ted Raimi that's in the shot, not Bruce Campbell.
Yeah. You don't know. It's a shimp, you know.
Although
stand-in.
I can't remember this, but is in Army of Darkness, did they keep up the little gray stripe he got in his hair at the end of Evil Dead 2?
No.
Okay, because I figured they just kind of dropped that. Because I was wondering if they're going to do that again when they did the TV show. That's something that they did, and they just never went back to it.
Well, it's also at the end of Evil Dead 2. Spoiler alert for Evil Dead 2. But when Ash gets to the medieval times and gets sent back in time, when he gets there, he immediately kills a Deadite and is hailed as a hero. With the beginning of Army of Darkness, he's their slave. So they obviously kind of retcon the beginnings.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's kind of, I think that's part of, like, their creative process, just kind of doing goofy shit like that, where it doesn't all line up with perfect continuity.
Yeah, obviously, considering every movie, they rewrite the history of it every time they make one. You know?
But I'm very interested to see where the show is going to go, because I read interviews where Sam Raimi said they're going to definitely bring the horror elements to it. They're going to focus on that and bring that to TV. Because like we mentioned before, there are a lot of shows on TV, like Walking Dead and stuff, that have elements of horror. But to see somebody like Sam Raimi be involved and direct an episode and have him say they're bringing horror, that's a totally different level compared to what you've seen on TV so far. Well, I guess you could say like the Masters of Horror and things like that.
Yeah.
Had horror directors doing TV. But to be fair, a lot of the directors were people who were a little bit past their prime, who were involved in those shows. I mean, some of them were still good, like John Carpenter's Cigarette Burns was a good episode. Probably better than his last few movies he's made.
Yeah. Yeah, Sam Raimi seems to not be declining yet. Thank God.
Unless you consider Spider-Man 3.
Well, you know what? Between that and I know, Wizard of Oz wasn't supposed to be a knockout or Great and Powerful Oz, but I mean, Drag Me to Hell was enough for me to like, okay, he's still got it, you know?
Yeah, Drag Me to Hell. That was one of those things too, though, where it's just kind of like, he just kind of free reign to do what he wanted to do, and it just came out right. Like everything, like the comparison movie did, it still kept a lot of the old Sam Raimi stuff that he always did, but it just kind of felt like he really hadn't missed a beat from the last time he did anything like that.
Yeah.
But then him being affiliated with Poltergeist kind of worries me a little bit. You know, I don't know how
that was probably just
a money thing. You know, I mean, they're going to pay.
He was a producer in the same way that a lot of people are producers on stuff. I would have to assume that he had relatively little involvement in it, other than maybe getting the project off the ground.
Yeah.
There was really no way to know exactly what his involvement was, but the fact that he wasn't on the press tour for it or talking it up recently tells me that he probably didn't feel too strongly about it.
Yeah.
At any rate.
And
And it wasn't too connected to it,
No,
Probably
yeah.
just.
And they're gonna give you a paycheck. Like, hey, here's some money. Just let us put your name on here because you're a well-known horror person. I mean, I guess you'd be, depending on the situation, dumb to turn it down.
Well, no, I love like John Carpenter's quotes recently. Somebody asked him what he thought about a remake of Escape from New York. He's like, I'm fine with it. I'll cash the check for my couch. And
He's always been very open with that, which I appreciate. It's like, hey, if he's going to do it, own up to it. And, at this point of his career, like, if that's the way he's making money, then hell, ride that wave.
Yeah, I mean,
It doesn't,
what they did with Mad Max Fury Road, so making a movie 30 years later with the new actor playing the part, gives me some hope that they could maybe possibly make a decent Escape from New York film.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
Get George Miller to do it.
Yeah, get George Miller to direct.
Yeah, the only thing with the new Escape from New York would just be like, it was kind of hard to see Mel Gibson get replaced in his role as Max, but I think it'd be really hard to replace the Snake Plissken character,
Especially
Kurt
since
Russell.
Kurt Russell could still play the part.
Yeah, he technically could still play the part.
Grow his hair out, throw a beard on him. He doesn't look that old.
Like, I don't know. It just seems like it'd be even harder to replace that character because while I think like overall the Mad Max series was a better set of movies, there's something, I don't know. You just got that character kind of spawned the Metal Gear characters, and it's just like, I don't know. It just seemed to be kind of hard to replace Kurt Russell.
Yeah, so we'll have to see what happens to that. I mean, it sounds like it eventually an Escape from New York reboot or remake will happen at some point, but it could just languish in development hell for forever and never actually come to fruition, which wouldn't really upset me.
Yeah.
But that was all the news from this week that I was aware of. I guess we can just kind of briefly go through what we've been watching this week. We can start with Derek.
Mainly, I spent a lot of time watching all four of the Scream movies, but I did get a chance to watch a movie Jugface, which is a movie that a listener sent us in.
Or wasn't it
suggested.
Jughead?
No, it was Jugface.
Oh, Jugface.
Yeah, and it was an interesting movie. It's it's like a bunch of backwoods people, and the pretty much thing is like one guy's just kind of like possessed, and there's an entity that lives in the woods, and it possesses this guy. He makes a jug of their face, and whoever it is, they kill them and sacrifice them to like the well, I guess they have. And one of the main girl at the beginning of the movie is having sex with her brother and is pregnant, and then she finds that she is the next person to be sacrificed. So she hides the jug, and so it just starts killing everybody at random. And it's just one of those really funny movies. Like it's paced pretty well. It's not like ultra violent, but it has its moments. But I think the thing that just makes it so funny is like the guy's name is Dwight that makes the jugs, and he's kind of like Dwight combined with Rain Man, like Dwight from The Office combined with Dustin Hoffman's Rain Man character. So it's just a really interesting person. He's in like. The family's all redneck, and when the dad spoiler alert, when the dad finds out that the sister and the brother had been having sex and he's like, oh, God damn it, son of a bitch. And he just like, they just start freaking out. And it's just so funny to see, like, I guess that's what the real people would be like in that situation, and I mean, it's a really good watch. I mean, it's got a little bit of comedy in it, but just maybe
a pretty new film.
Yeah, it's pretty new. I think it was like 2013 to 14-ish. Maybe the parts in the movie that came off as comedic weren't supposed to be, but it just like the characters' reactions to all the different redneck stuff that's going on just makes it kind of funny. But like if you're looking for an ultra violent horror movie, it's probably not for you. But if you're looking for more of a suspense horror movie, I think it delivered pretty good because I watched it and I thought it was pretty good. And usually I don't like movies like that, but it was pretty the cast made it entertaining just because of all the redneck stuff that was going on, so made for a good watch. And outside of that, I really didn't get to watch anything else because I had to watch we're doing all the Scream movies, so I had to kind of refresh myself on them. But if you're looking for something on Netflix, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah. Same here. I didn't watch anything aside from Scream just because I was trying to get through all 4 of those along with everything else. I don't think I really watched any. May have watched a little bit of TV, a couple of shows, but nothing super relevant to our site or that I can even remember really. What about you, William? Did you watch anything else besides Scream?
So I did watch Housebound finally.
Yeah, did you like it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was interesting how not to give away a spoiler, but just kind of like a tone shift at some point in the midway through the movie where it kind of goes from being one type of movie to another.
That's the thing I love about it, kind of.
And like the last section of it kind of reminds me more of like the Wes Craven's The People Under the Stairs almost.
Yeah.
And definitely, it's just a fun watch. It's on Netflix Watch Instant if you're looking for something to watch in addition to Jugface and the other movie that's out there. It was a fun little movie. And isn't there going to be a remake of that?
Yeah, that's what I heard. I guess it's Peter Jackson's trying to get off the ground.
It's from New Zealand, so they speak English, just a little bit of an accent, and some local dialect and lingo that you may not be aware of, but.
Maybe they can do like the original Mad Max and just dub it with English, like American voices.
I just don't they could just literally take that movie, put it back in theaters, the bigger marketing budget, and boom, there you go.
Yeah,
I understand why you need to remake it.
And everything too is with since it's a newer movie, like I like the cast in it. So if they recasted it, it'd probably make me less interested in it because I already like the original one and it's still relatively new. So if they were to recast everything with more of an American cast, probably wouldn't be as interested because I feel like I've already watched it, so I don't really need to go watch a movie that's, at most 2 years old with a different cast telling the same story. So that might make me not as interested in if they remade it and released it here.
Unless they can do something crazy and cast like Natalie Portman in the lead role. Just ridiculous people who should never be in those types of movies. Other than that, I don't know why you would do it. But
or Jennifer Lawrence. Natalie Portman's kind of.
It says I guess New Line is the one that picked up the rights to it, and then the original director and I think producers are all helping to produce it. Yeah. So at least they're involved. But yeah,
I did see something kind of interesting. This is kind of more pertains to William because you had I know you've had the sleep paralysis dreams and stuff. They're actually making a movie about sleep paralysis.
Oh, yeah. I've seen trailers for that.
I cannot think of the guy's name, but he directed Room 237, which is about Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Or, what's the author's name? I can't think of his name.
Okay, Rodney Asher directed that.
Yeah. And I watched a trailer for it today. It seems kind of interesting. I think it's more of like a documentary than it is. It's like a documentary horror film.
Yeah, so it's called The Nightmare. And I've seen it. So it's a documentary mixed with kind of like reenactments of people's dreams.
Yeah.
And sleep paralysis is something interesting because I've had it for a while. I mean, it's not really, it's just when I fall asleep on my back a lot of times, like I'll experience it. And it's just where you kind of get kicked out of sleep at the wrong point. So you're still... your body and your brain still has the part of like the REM cycle where you can't move, so you can't move, but you can see things. And since you're still in a certain amount of dream state, your brain can hallucinate things in the room with you.
Oh wow!
And like one of the first times I ever experienced it was like a long time ago. I was in I think I was still in college, and it was like a night that I worked super late the night before and only got a few hours of sleep. And I woke up. And then, like, out of the corner of my eye, I could see, like, a shadowy figure standing at the, like, foot of my bed. And it's one of those things, like, where you can't move and you can't talk. So I just sit there and, like, try to keep my eyes as closed as much as possible. Ugh. And I could see this thing walking around the bed staring at me. And then, like, by the end of it, like, it was like, it seemed like it took forever and it, like, scared the shit out of me. And then I had it happen later, too. And this was the one that was more creepy, actually. I was at my apartment, and I was the only one that lived there, and I could hear something in the room, and like in my mind, I thought it was like this demon, like dog thing, and then I could feel it crawl up on the bed and walk on the bed, like beside my legs, like with like imprints and like the physicality of like it walking towards my face.
Wow.
But at that point, I'd researched it online and found out like that it's sleep paralysis and it's a thing. So once you know what it is, it's not as scary.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things with the film, though, kind of the stuff I read about it, was that, they interviewed all these different people, and the director himself was talking about, when he first experienced his first bout of it, that, the internet wasn't as, wasn't really the way it is now, so he couldn't really look it up. And when you started finding stuff, like, people tend to have the same experiences all over the place.
The shadow.
Yeah, it's just
like a shared experience.
Yeah, it's like typically, he said most people have the shadow man or like a witch-like woman, which I guess that's kind of interesting to think that, like, of all the people that have it, they continually have the same. Even you don't know each other whatsoever, and you both have sleep paralysis, you see the same things.
Well,
so I guess that's
interesting. There's some interesting pictures of that on Wikipedia when you type in sleep paralysis.
But to be fair, though, when I've had sleep paralysis, the only time I ever saw a shadow figure was that one time. And one of the ones that people typically describe as like a man wearing a hat, but you can't really see any facial features, and that's not what I saw. I just saw kind of like the stereotypical, like, Grim Reaper, like where it's just a dark robe and you can't see a face.
Wow. Yeah, there's a picture of the guy with something with a hat on here, too, over top somebody.
Yeah. But two, the ones I have anymore, like the past few times I've had it, just the way my apartment is laid out, my bedroom it's like a shotgun style, so my bedroom is right next to my living room, and there's a entrance door in my living room that you can see from my bed. And typically the ones I have now are just like I can hear that door opening and somebody coming into the apartment and like walking around. But now, like, I typically can figure out, okay, this is sleep paralysis because I can't move. So then I just try to talk or move my feet, and then I wake up, and then I just go roll over my side and go back to sleep.
By the way, the film's called The Nightmare.
Yeah.
And I guess it premiered in January at Sundance.
Yeah, so I definitely want to see it just because I think most instances of alien abductions, of hauntings, most of it can be described by sleep paralysis. And the people who are aware of it and still think that there's ghosts in their room, it just drives me crazy. It's just like you're awake and your brain is still dreaming, so it's hallucinating things into the room. So,
I want to check this out. It sounds interesting. It has a 69% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, and I saw last week Vice did an article about it too, about sleep paralysis.
Yeah, that's what I actually found. I was going through Facebook today and I saw the article and I read it. It's like, that'd be something good to talk about.
But I saw, like, I think the article's title was "Sleep Paralysis is Fucking Terrifying," and it's like to a point. But if you know what it is, sometimes you can make weird shit happen, like Mickey Mouse show up or something. But that's
So
very,
it's
very, very
control
rare.
your dreams a little bit if you get good at it.
I've only ever had one experience with it, and like a little girl slapped me in the face, and then I woke up. And I've done it a couple times, but I think, like, once you know what it is, you can kind of wake yourself up from it.
Well, one time I had a cat slap me in the face, but it was actually just my friend's cat when I was asleep at his house.
Yeah, but that was the scariest one.
I think my wife may have experienced that when she was younger, because she kind of described it to me before.
Yeah.
She never saw anything. I don't think she did, but yeah. So I'll have to talk to her about that.
And it's mostly it occurs when people sleep on their back, and it can be also like when you're stressed or not getting enough sleep. Because I haven't had it happen in a while. I think the last time I had it happen was actually after I watched the movie The Babadook, and it was kind of like the Babadook thing was in the room.
So that's the stereotypical thing is, he has a hat.
But it was like, but I knew it was like the Babadook.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck this, wake up. And then I woke up, laid on my stomach, went back to sleep. So I think that covers what we've been watching for this, and we can go into the Scream series since we got 4 movies to talk about.
Yeah.
So starting with Scream 1, this movie was released in 1996, and according to IMDb, a group of teens are pitted against a masked murderer that tests their knowledge of horror movies. And we can just go ahead and say these are all going to be full of spoilers because these movies are all, with the exception of Part 4, they're all more than 10 years old. And if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably seen these. Mm-hmm. The first Scream, the crazy thing to me, when you watch it now, you don't really get this, but the marketing materials in the trailer for the movie made it appear as if Drew Barrymore was the lead actress.
Oh, I know. Yeah, she was all over that.
At the time, she was the biggest star in the movie, and they killed her in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah. Which is, it's almost good because I think it's one of those things where you think she may be the leading lady,
Yeah, because she's
Kind of
on
like the Psycho thing where, oh, this is going to be the leading person, and then gone right away. So
Well, I think another thing too is good about that is it just kind of lets you know, like in that film, that nobody's safe. If you're gonna kill the biggest name you have in the movie in the first 5 minutes, that kind of sets up for maybe other crazy shit to happen during the course of the movie.
and that becomes less true in the sequels, but we'll get to those in a minute. But I think just Scream 1 is, in my opinion, I think it's the best in the series, of course.
oh yes, absolutely.
It came out at a time because, like I said, looking back, it's kind of hard to remember all this. But in the 90s, horror was not in a very good place. You were in the, the 9th and 10th, or was it Jason Goes to Hell was the 9th movie in that series?
Ugh, yeah.
So you had that. You had Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers, which was Paul Rudd's first starring role, but not a great movie, at least in its original theatrical form. So you had, just sequelitis. You were deep in the sequels. You had a bunch of garbage that was coming out. And Scream was the movie that kind of, set up the postmodern horror film where the characters have seen horror films. So it's kind of like they violated the rule, like in zombie movies. They've never heard the word zombie.
Yes, yeah.
Except for in Shaun of the Dead, where they actually make a reference to it. But Scream was the first horror movie to acknowledge, like, Halloween had these rules, and it's, even in the movie has scenes from Halloween in the movie as they're watching that movie at a party, and it was just a great reflection on the genre,
and especially because there had been so many, they relied on this formula, and it's one of those things where it had been built up over time and kind of expired itself. So it was the perfect time for that movie to come in and kind of break down the walls and deconstruct all of that.
Yeah, and two, like the effect that it had on the horror genre at the time, it kind of ended the needless sequels that are happening. I mean, it's also just because Jason Goes to Hell and Halloween Curse of Michael Myers didn't really do that well at the box office, but that came out, and I think the studios kind of had to reevaluate what they were doing with their movies because they're like, well, Scream was a huge, huge hit. It made, I think, like $100 million. So it was definitely a big mainstream hit, which the horror genre hadn't had for a while. And you can actually, if you watch Wes Craven's A New Nightmare that came out a few years before this, you kind of see the groundwork being laid for him to do kind of a postmodern horror film. Yeah, I think that Scream was just a better movie than A New Nightmare by far.
And watching this too, I mean, I don't know how much it is, if it's how much to his credit or Kevin Williamson, probably both of them, but how much Wes Craven appears to love horror films. There's so many little callbacks to it, not just deconstructing them in the film, but it just seems like he's a horror director that has a real love for the genre and like all of his peers, directors, films and everything. So at the time for horror fans, it was just fun seeing that and all of these little things. And it kind of made you feel like a part of it, and like it was a film made for horror fans, really just to eat up because it kind of got it had its cake and ate it too, because it was like she wasn't a babysitter, but kind of like a babysitter slasher film, while at the same time turning everything on its head.
But one thing that I like too, though, is like Jamie Kennedy's character like broke the fourth wall because he broke down every single rule for the horror movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I think that was kind of an interesting character because he was kind of smarter than Mo, because he set up the ground rules, and that's just how all the horror movies up to that time had worked.
Yeah, he's kind of, he's kind of the audience as far as knowing what's going on, and a lot of moments in the film too mirror what people do when they watch movies, screaming like, don't do that or don't do something stupid. I mean, he calls it out. And then when they're actually watching the camera that Gail Weathers, Courtney Cox characters hides in the house, they're watching the movie saying, don't go in there or whatever. And then they're watching the footage in the van doing the same thing. So it's just all, wrapped up together.
One thing too, talking about Wes Craven, he kind of made a nod to Nightmare on Elm Street in the movie. When the principal was walking down one of the scenes in the movie, the principal's walking through and he talks to the janitor, and the janitor's actually wearing Freddy Krueger's sweater.
Yeah, that's Wes Craven.
Yeah. It's Wes Craven and his name's Freddy.
Yeah.
So it's, and then too, just like the amount
and also too, not just that reference, but oh my God, why cannot think of her boyfriend's name, the killer?
Oh crap! Yeah, he referenced something.
Billy.
Too.
Yeah, Billy Loomis.
Yeah, Dr. Loomis.
Yeah.
Well, and two, just it's kind of funny too the career arcs of these different characters in these movies, because Skeet Ulrich, who played Billy Loomis, kind of got that part because he looked a little bit like Johnny Depp, who was in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, he did,
and I think his
yeah.
career for a long time was based on the fact like looks like Johnny Depp, but not as good and cheaper. I mean, I do think that was kind of his MO for a while. But just the characters, it had a very 90s cast. You know, it had Nev Campbell, Matthew Lillard, who plays kind of the same role in everything he's in, or at least he used to.
I think he was at Empire Records before that. He was also on Skate TV, which is like a Nickelodeon skateboarding TV show I used to watch when I was younger.
He
He was like in everything in the 90s and like early 2000s, and he's kind of fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah. These movies had, I love the cast in these movies, and it's not like they're too outside the box. I mean, they may be, but they're all well-known actors. So it's just, it's fun. Like it's a fun Hollywood, like studio horror film, just seeing all these great actors getting picked off or just having these cameos. The cast in all the movies I like for the most part.
Yeah, it's
I think
funny
the
'cause
casting is great.
It's just funny too when you watch that movie, like almost everybody is recognizable from something, even if they're just a TV actor or actually a major film actor. I think that makes the movies a little more fun because you actually know most of the main characters from something else. Like
And it works perfect in this too, because you know, sometimes when they try to make a movie to make you feel like you're really part of it and it's a real world, they want those unknown actors. So you're not constantly thinking, oh, they're in this other thing. But because these films are so meta and they're self-aware, it's totally cool to have these actors who are from other stuff being there, because it is, you know, the movie's kind of winking at the audience that this is all just a movie. It's a game, you know, and they can throw in anybody there and just make it entertaining.
And one thing, too, to point out, I just looked up everybody's age at the time the movie would have been filmed. So the main characters, so Nev Campbell, Skeet Ulrich, Matthew Lillard, Rose McGowan, they were all like 23 or older when the movie got made. So it follows the standard horror trope of casting a mid-20-something to play a high schooler.
And you know that had to be deliberate.
Yeah. And none of the main cast members got nude. It doesn't show any full nudity of the main cast.
Yeah.
Which
really, I don't think any of them, right? The only nudity in there may be if you see it while they're watching Halloween.
Yeah.
If you even see it.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I like that they never do that in any of those films.
Well, they did do the PG-13 relationship thing at the very beginning, which is kind of funny.
And then she said, I forgot what the they talked about their lives being a movie, and she said, or maybe just a good porno.
Yeah. It's like,
And then they do the nasty, and then within 10 minutes she finds out that he's the killer. Yeah. It's just one thing we have to point out in the course of the series, David Arquette's portrayal of Dewey, he is by far one of the worst police officers to ever exist. He is terrible.
He's just terrible. It's like, you know, of all the characters that die in the franchise, why they couldn't just get him like the most over the top, ridiculous, worst death you've ever seen, and it would have been perfect because his character's so doopy and dopey.
He's like the best comic relief in the film, though. He's just like, I love him through all these movies because he's kind of, I don't want to say he overacts, but he's just hilarious. Like if you were trying to take these films seriously, he would be awful in it, but he is like the perfect actor for that role, I think.
I actually liked his portrayal in what's the Scary Movie franchise a little better.
Doofus.
Oh.
Yeah.
you know, I think I read that Scream was actually going to be called a Scary Movie originally.
Yeah.
It was like the working title, which is interesting.
Yeah, and it's, I think I mentioned this before, maybe I haven't. It's kind of funny, like, the Scream series started in 96, then it had a sequel, and then the third one was in 2000, and then it didn't have another movie come out until 2011. But in the meantime, the Scary Movie franchise came out, and at least the first few heavily borrowed from Scream, and then later kind of branched off into all the different crazy shit they did. But Anthony Anderson was in the Scary Movies, and then eventually found his way into the Scream series. It's like this weird meta crossover of an actor from a parody series appearing in the main series that it started parodying. And
there's so much fun stuff in these movies like that, you know? And that's what, even if some of it's a little, that's what I think just keeps it fun and kind of light for the most part. I mean, sometimes they kind of they get away from that, and like especially I feel like parts of part 3 and even a little bit of 4 where they kind of just go down the line like, okay, we're just kind of doing a typical movie here now, which is fine because at this point too, I think you like the characters, you know, by the time it gets around second, third, and fourth movie, you kind of do like the characters so much where you're just interested in seeing them. And that's another interesting thing about this franchise is like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, the through line through all those films are the killers. That's who's the star. And obviously when they dropped Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th Part 5, right?
Yeah,
they had a drop in box office and all that stuff. So with this movie, the killer always gets replaced, but those main characters are the through line, and that's what kind of keeps everybody, for the most part, on board with these films. So it would be interesting to see what happens with, you know, if they did make another one and kind of got rid of all the main cast.
Yeah, 'cause if you think about it, this is probably really the only horror franchise where they're like, I know you have the ghost face, but really, if you think about it, only like in this movie, the ghost face is in there quite a bit, but when it actually gets to the end of the movie, they take the costumes off and it's just the killers. So it's one of the few horror franchises where instead of having the same killers, because you always have every ghost face is somebody different. And, you know, it's just one of those weird franchises where the main characters or the characters as in all of them are just the actual cast. Like you have 3 or 4 people make it through each movie or make it through the movies. And typically you don't have that happen in any other franchise. Halloween is the only other one where they had some of the same characters make it past a couple movies. But this one, you know, the ones that don't make it are the killers.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I think
they keep Halloween like within the family a lot, but it's one of those things where it's like not the main cast is through all the films. And another thing I really like about the Scream franchise is the killer is a real person. So like one of my criticisms of, say, Friday the 13th, once he starts getting a little supernatural and it seems like there's like no stopping him, and the early ones when all the kills happen like off screen when somebody just ends up dead, there's no real suspense to that. But with these movies, it's a real person, so they're getting knocked around, beat up, and, you know, they always make a phone call and kind of warn them. So there's always a suspense and kind of a cat and mouse game. So anytime somebody dies or even is in danger of dying, it's always entertaining. Like there's always a well-designed scene around it. And there's always drama to it because they can fight them off and, you know, they're knocking Ghostface into doors or out windows and stuff like that. So that's kind of, even when this franchise is a little weak, it's still fun. You know, that part just stays fun for me. And I hope the show at least has that. I hope they, you know, lean on that and just, you know.
Yeah, it's like the killers were never that good at what they did. You know, they were sloppy and they were. I think that's one thing too makes it more interesting. Because a lot of these other movies, like, you know, with your Michael Myers and your Freddys and your Jasons and
they're like superhuman or
they're superhuman. Where these guys like they go to stab you and they're going to miss, fly through, and get knocked out. You know, because there's a lot of times in movies that get knocked out and they get hurt or they just miss and break through a window or, you know, I think that makes it a little more interesting. Just because that's typically not something you see. They're not. You know, they've only ever done it the couple of times they kill people. They're not these professionals. You know, they make mistakes and they can be just as sloppy trying to kill somebody as somebody is that's trying to get away from them.
And in the first movie, we'll go kind of discuss this through line in the next movies. But in the first movie, the killers passed the smell test. Nothing that happened in the movie that the killers did seemed like something that would be physically impossible for them to do. Because, like, you know, we talked before about Friday the 13th Part 1 and Sleepaway Camp. There's some of the movies when there's the reveal of the killer, it's like, but could they really have done everything that transpired preceding that in the movie? In this case, yes, because there wasn't really anything they did that was superhuman. And two, it's kind of fun once you've known the twist to go back and rewatch the movie and try to figure out who was the killer at which point, since there were 2 of them.
Yeah, and that's what's cool about every one, too, because you kind of know it's coming. There's 2, and you're like, okay, who is it? There's not just one killer.
Another thing, too, though, that I think this horror movie or the Scream franchise had, or just especially the first one, there wasn't really any ultra-violent kills in the movie. It was just generally your standard, Friday 13th, Michael Myers or Halloween, like, slasher kills where they get stabbed, but it's not really overly violent. Probably one of the more violent kills was, I can't think of the lady's name, is when she got stuck in the garage door and her neck got broke.
Oh,
Yeah, Drew
Rose
Barrymore.
McGowan.
Yeah.
Rose McGowan.
Which is interesting because, I don't know if that, because I was 6 years old when this movie came out, so I don't really know at that time she was a huge actress, but I know she's a fairly big actress, and they killed her in kind of like it would kind of suck to get your neck broke and just be stuck hung in a garage door. Which it always reminds me of, I hate to do this, but Scary Movie when the fat girl got stuck in the garage and it fell in on her or something. But it was just kind of interesting to see how they would kill some of these bigger name people like that, Because you think about it in your other horror movies outside like Johnny Depp, they were just kind of like throwaway names that you might see in one movie and never see in anything else, where these people were actively bigger name stars at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we can all agree that everyone loves the first Scream, and it's the best in the series.
Yeah. When that came out, that was like huge for me, and it's still to this day, going back and watch it, like I love that film. There's really not much I can say bad about it. It did so much for movies at the time too, not just for itself. The one thing about that film though, at the end when Matthew Lillard and Skeet are stabbing each other, to that way so when the cops find them or whatever, they can act like they're victims. Wouldn't it be weird that Billy Loomis had like cornstarch blood all over his clothes?
Well,
That's the only thing I'm always like, why wouldn't they question that?
I guess they could say, I don't know. I guess their thought process was too that probably by the time the cops got there, it'd be drenched in real blood, and they're probably not going to do forensic analysis on that if you survive.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh,
They might just rip it up and throw it away. Yeah.
One thing I love too in this movie is, since I watched all four of them, they kind of all, like the same thing we talked about when we did the Friday 13th, they kind of all blend together on some scenes because they always make a throwback. I'm pretty sure in the first one they had the Jamie Kennedy's character talked about, you always have to watch out because they come back at the end. Mm-hmm. And Billy Loomis came back and they had to kill him again.
Yeah.
Because they shot him a couple of times. And I just love that scene because, that is one of the most overdone. But, theirs was kind of like almost making fun of it, to a degree.
Yeah.
But I just love that, if you think about it, that happens in every single horror movie. You think that they're dead, but they're not. Yeah.
And I think it happens in every Scream movie, too.
Yeah, it's just like they never learn, And that makes it interesting, makes it kind of funny because it's like you said, the movie's so self-aware that it's like they break their own rules all the time. And I think that makes it somewhat enjoyable because the characters know they shouldn't do these things. They've discussed it, but yet they still do it,
Yeah. So I think we can go ahead and move on to Scream 2 and the synopsis, or not the synopsis, just the summary of this movie story from IMDb. 2 years after the first series of murders, a new psychopath dons the Ghostface costume and a new string of killings begin. And this was Scream Goes to College. When I was younger, the way I saw these movies, I think I saw Scream 2 first, because this came out in 97, so at the time I would have been 12. So I saw this one on VHS, somebody rented it and I saw it, and then went back and watched the first one. Because, till when you're 10, 11, 12, 13, theoretically it's too young to watch some of these movies, but, as Jeff Goldblum said in Jurassic Park, life finds a way. And I remember seeing these movies. So Scream 2 is the one I saw first, and I really enjoyed it. Then I went back and watched 1. So it kind of spoiled the first one for me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But also at that age, I don't think I was super into the story plot. So I think I still was surprised by the 2 killer thing. But it's just this movie was the last one where you really felt like anybody in the cast was in danger. Because in this one, they made the infamous decision to kill Jamie Kennedy's character, Randy, which coincidentally was the last decent role he had in the movie, I think.
Malibu's most wanted.
Yeah, so Scream 2, I liked the feeling of it, and the music. It felt a little bit different than the first one in terms of just the music. It felt more, I don't know, It kept the same feeling though. It felt like it very much felt like an extension of the first, and it came out a year later, so it obviously was filmed very close to the first one. Which I think when you compare this one to the third one, like the first and second definitely feel like they're very much the same creative team, the same type of movie. Towards the third and fourth ones feel a little bit different.
Yeah, they do feel, that one does feel a little bit more distant for sure.
But, the cast in this one, it opens up with Jada Pinkett Smith and Omar Epps, who would later go on to become bigger stars. But, they're the opening kill. And one thing I will say, though, is in these movies and any movie in general where people go to a movie and see things, I've never seen a single theater of people in my life act like the people did at the beginning of this one.
Yeah, that was the one thing that was just kind of like, ugh. Like, yeah, it was just kind of like a painful thing to watch. I've been to a lot of different stuff, never seen that.
I think it's the theater. I've heard of some crazy theaters before where things get pretty wild, Yeah. And I think it's just the theaters around us are pretty calm. And I'm not saying it's like a common thing, but like, hell, have you seen what is it called? The Last Dragon, I think it's called. You seen that movie with Show Nuff? It's like a kung fu film. They go to theater, same thing is going on in there. But it's like a theater in Harlem, I think.
It's like maybe if there's like what's the theater in Austin?
Yeah, Alamo Draft House.
The Alamo Draft House. Like if they had like special movie nights, like maybe people dress up and stuff. I don't think they're running around wearing ghost face masks going.
Yeah, this is a little bit wilder than I'm sure probably most reality, but
yeah, I feel like a lot of people probably get kicked out too if you're running around. But it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, I think it set the movie up kind of good because it still very much mocked its own existence. Because what was the movie in the movie called? Stab. So I mean, I kind of like it pokes fun at itself with that because it's like a movie about the same exact thing that just happened, and it's even the same killer in the movie that was in that. So I mean, I kind of enjoy it a little bit because it's still kind of having fun with the whole concept.
And two, like it expanded on a character that was only briefly mentioned in the first movie, Cotton Weary, played by Liev Schreiber. Yeah. So it brought him in. It also had a Timothy Oliphant towards the beginning of his career. Timothy Olyphantastic, as some have called him. Then you also had another crossover. So the I Know What You Did Last Summer series was also written by Kevin Williamson, who wrote Scream 1, 2, and 4. And that movie, one of the stars was Sarah Michelle Gellar, who appeared in Scream 2 as a character. So it's another crossover of series occurring just by cast members.
One thing I like, though, is because I'm assuming she was probably a fairly decent star at that time, right?
Yeah, she was definitely on the way up and one of the bigger young stars.
And it's like they killed her pretty mercilessly because she got stabbed like 4 or 5 times and thrown off of a balcony onto her face, That
was a pretty big kill scene.
Yeah, it really was. So you had to give these movies a little bit of credit just because, that's kind of ballsy. They killed Drew Barrymore in the first one, and then you kill her in the second one, and the death she gets isn't just a weak one. It's pretty awful if you think about it. Not only do you get stabbed a couple of times, you get flipped off of a balcony and just smash your face and die.
And then they also had a scene where everybody's discussing film. And in that scene, there's actually, in addition to Randy and Timothy Oliphant's character, Mickey, Joshua Jackson, who would be in Dawson's Creek, was also in that class.
Yeah.
And that was definitely the Tarantino era of cinema. You can definitely feel that influence in their discussions about movies. And they, discuss sequels. And this is, too, where the movies themselves discuss the rules of sequels and how they go and establish rules. Then also Jerry O'Connell was in this movie playing the stereotypical good-looking guy. When you look at this cast list of these movies, there are a ton of people in it that would go on to do other things.
I know. I mean, like I said, the casting for these films are just great for what they are.
Yeah, and then I don't remember the actress's name at the moment, but Roseanne's sister was in it.
yeah.
Or Sheldon's mom.
And then too, Heather Graham played the role
Sidney
in
Prescott.
No, she was the Drew Barrymore role in the stab movie within the movie, which is funny because they then later call back to that in Scream 4 when they're having like a screening of the movie. Mm-hmm. So you just have a crazy cast, and two, like these voice changers that exist are like the best voice changers that have ever been made, and I would love to get one. Like you can't even do that now, but just movie magic. Like I said,
another thing about this one too is like the first one was like a typical babysitter murders slasher film, and this is like the sorority, college slasher film, which they point out in the film too. I think Rose McGowan's character mentions it, or somebody does too. So it's like they even change up almost the genre of slasher a little bit as well.
Oh, this is a little bit different. But we talk about Dewey's like the worst of all time for anything. And in this movie, he's kind of handicapped from his injury in the first one. And it's like they all rely on him a lot in the movie. And if you think about it, he's not very useful because he's injured pretty badly.
He's one of the worst crime detectives ever. And also, too, just looking at this quickly while I'm thinking about it, Tori Spelling was the one who portrayed the character of Sydney in the Stab movies, because in the first one, they talked about who would play them in a movie of it. And she's like, I'd probably play by Tori Spelling. I guess she had a good enough sense of humor about it that she actually appeared in it. Luke Wilson was in the movie within the movie.
Yeah, Skeet. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So it's just crazy casting for these movies. Like I said, this one, and it also had the balls to kill off Randy, which I think pissed a lot of people off at the time when they did it, because he was kind of the audience surrogate, especially for the Fangoria, horror fan, movie fan viewers kind of associate that character, and just to kill it off. To kill him off.
They should have replaced him with Tarantino. Had Tarantino come in and just be that new guy, or just kind of loved or hated.
Yeah, just kind of pull a beer, or they could have done a beer fest and just had his cousin who looks exactly like him, who knows everything about everybody in the situation, come in and just go on like nothing ever happened.
And I feel like if they were to, like a lot of movies now, if they were to make a new movie of this ilk, they would probably go the Big Bang Theory route and have like a Sheldon-like character as the movie nerd. Mm-hmm. And of course, Randy came across. He came across more as a real person. Like I said, part 2 kind of upped the ante. There were more creative kills, I think, in terms of how they executed them, and like set pieces. There was the part in the car.
Yeah, that was the car scene where the police officer or protective service person actually probably had the goriest kill up to that point. Maybe even more gory than even the third, because he actually got the pole through his head, and they showed it. So that was probably the worst death anybody got.
And that was a great little suspense scene when she had to crawl over him and everything. Like when I was rewatching the film, I saw that film somewhat recently, maybe like in the past 5 years, but that scene always stood out in that film as just an awesome little scene of suspense.
It's because they did it right too, though. They didn't, because you were expecting a cheap scare to happen, and the fact that it didn't happen, I think, was actually a little bit better. Yeah. Because how many times can they? Yeah, it's kind of like I said, there's always these little jabs at all these movies, but kind of taking a step back to Randy's character when he got killed, he kind of he was always so aware of everything that when he got killed, I think they probably could have been a little more creative with his death. Because it's like he kind of walked into it.
Yeah.
Well, there's a scene earlier in the movie, like once the killings have started, when Randy's talking to Dewey, and he like nails the killer on the head. He like, oh, it's probably the creepy film school guy, Mickey, who is obsessed with horror movies.
Yeah.
And he was right. And then, and it's just, I think I read too that they had thought about trying to bring Randy back for the third one, like writing his death out, like somehow he was saved, and they just decided that it would have made no sense. So they just did the thing where he made the video,
which I love at the time when I saw 3, because I saw the first one when it came out, and then the second one, like I was a fan of these as they released. So when I saw 3 and that he came back that way, that was enough to make me happy. I was like, oh, that's awesome. He at least provides enough context and kind of info for the audience.
Yeah, and just like I said, 3, I think, or not 3, 2, Scream 2, I think I like the feeling of it, like the college slasher. It was just a good progression from the first one. It wasn't as good as the first one, but it felt like I said, just felt like it was from the same feeling and tone as the first one, and it translated pretty well.
It's from the same place, and it's like they progressively move the story along. But then you kind of have. This is the start where the Sydney character kind of becomes like Bruce Willis, and just got your diehard, where like she almost becomes. This is the beginning of her character kind of becoming like invincible. Like at some point, nothing's going to happen bad to her character, and that's probably the only issue I have with this franchise is like, at a certain point that nothing bad is going to, like her character might go through some turmoil, but you ultimately know they're not going to kill her character off. So.
Not to jump too far ahead, but to be fair, when 4 was coming out, I really thought she was going to die. I thought they were going to kill her off because it was supposed to be the start of a new trilogy.
Well, and 2, I guess we can kind of wrap up part 2 and go to 3 if there's any other thoughts.
Well, another character we didn't bring about, which isn't a big character, but just kind of funny to see her in it, was Portia de la Rossi was in it as well.
Oh, yeah, she was a sorority sister.
Which is kind of just funny to me because I'm just so used to watching her like Arrested Development. So to see her character in that when she was younger is kind of funny to me because I didn't even know she was in that.
And also Rebecca Gayheart.
Yeah, she was another huge younger star at the time.
She was in the not so great Urban Legend movie.
Yeah, I remember.
Influenced by the Scream series.
Yeah.
Was she in Jawbreaker as well? The MTV movie?
I thought she was.
I would have to look.
Let me look that up real quick.
There's a lot of stuff I haven't watched in a long time.
But, I'm trying to think if there's anything important that we kind of missed out on, too, that we need to discuss. Because all the kill scenes were pretty much your average, what you expect, slasher. These typically have a little bit more of a story than your normal slashers. Because, like, Friday 13th and, Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street really don't have a huge story, whereas these kind of have a little bit of one. Well, Timothy Oliphant's character goes for a long portion of the movie and he's not in it.
Yeah. And so Rebecca Gayheart was in Jawbreaker.
Yeah, and Rose McGowan. But that came out in 99. And Julie Benz. Oh.
And 2, like this movie, so the first movie there were the 2 killers. And in this movie, there was really just the one killer with financial backing from Billy's mom. And that makes sense. Like, when you watch the movie, there's nothing that says that it had to be 2 people. And it is kind of interesting at the end when he has Sydney's boyfriend, played by Jerry O'Connell, tied up. He says that he was part of it. And that was just, kind of playing into the first movie.
Yeah.
And I guess her mistrust of people. So it was, an interesting twist on it, and I'm glad they didn't, just rehash the first one and actually did something unique and original. And 2, at this point, like these movies, to me, they still are definitely in the horror genre, but it's more of like a crime whodunit kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely still
almost
horror
more like
elements.
a Hitchcock genre of horror,
Yeah. So
rather than straight slasher.
Yeah, because there's actually like we said, the cast is good. So there's some level of acting in it. It's not just people screwing and drinking and smoking pot up until the point they die. There actually is some character progression and story that happens in addition to, just awesome kills and violent deaths for a lot of the characters. So I guess we can go ahead and move into part 3. And this movie was released in 2000. And according to IMDb, while Sydney and her friends visit the Hollywood set of Stab 3, the third film based on the Woodsboro murders, a new ghost face begins to terrorize them once again. And this movie, once again, it still had a pretty good cast. Had Parker Posey played the Gail Weathers character, and I thought that she did a good job.
Yeah, she was great. This movie also steps away a little bit from Neve Campbell. Like, she's not really in it that much. It's more of Courtney Cox and David Arquette and some of the,
because
you know what I mean? They're the other people that are starring in the film.
The funny thing about David Arquette's Dewey character is, he got hurt in the second, or he got hurt in the first one. So the second one, he was kind of handicapped, but his injury in the second one kind of fixed him, so he's more normal in the third one.
Yeah,
right?
It's like Christmas Vacation when he's like, "Oh, your eyes aren't crossed anymore." It's like, "Well, I get kicked by a mule, eyes go cross, fell down a well, straightened back out."
Which always was kind of funny because it's like they're just like, "Oh, it's fine."
So what's on this movie, you kind of get two general opinions, and we can kind of go into what each of us fall on the side of. So you have people who think that this movie was the perfect meta tie-up to the original trilogy of films. They thought that it perfectly tied it up and was just the right amount of meta and, tackled everything the way that it should have been done. And then there's a second group of people who think that this movie kind of fell into being similar to the movies that it was making fun of in the first two, that it fell much more in line with the later sequels and series than the first two that had a little bit more to say.
Yeah, I definitely fall more into that camp. That's not to say I didn't like it. Obviously, this is not as strong as the first two at all. But like I said, because I like the characters, I kind of cut them a little slack because I'm like, all right, well, I like the cast enough to just kind of enjoy the film, but I do wish that it would have said a little bit more about trilogies and the ending. They attempt to, but it doesn't do anything super clever.
And two, this movie was the first one that wasn't written by Kevin Williamson. The first two were written by Williamson, directed by Wes Craven. This was also directed by Craven, but it was only Williamson was not the writer. He was just credited with the characters from the prior movies. And it was written by someone else. That's also part of why this one feels different than the first two.
Yeah, it almost just even looks like it was shot different. I don't know. To me, it just felt completely different. Just the look and the overall vibe of the movie. I think one of the issues I had this movie is it was almost too meta, and it tried to be too smart and try to make too many references in the outside world. Because there's a scene where they ran, I cannot think of the actress's name, Princess Leia. They ran to Princess Leia working at a
Carrie Fisher.
They ran to Carrie Fisher, and she's working as like a film studio's, I guess, what would you call her? She was like
she's sort of like a secretary, but she's basically managing all the archives.
She managed the archives. And they make a reference to her. She even makes a reference to her looking just like her and having tried to audition for the part. And then they make a reference to Courtney Cox's character, Gail, looking. She's like, well, I'm going to tell you who you look like. Like, I like those little jazz, but then it just gets to be like too much.
Well, and two, I think we have to mention this movie featured music by the band Creed.
Yes.
Who at the time was one of the biggest bands, but now is also considered one of the worst bands of all time.
And
there's also Creed. A poster hanging on her the set of her room.
Yeah, Creed. Yeah, good old Scott Sapp. No, but it's not that I didn't like it. It did not feel like a Scream movie to me. It didn't feel like the first two at all. And it just seemed, like you said, Neve Campbell really wasn't even in it that much. I mean, like the first part of the movie she wasn't. And then Cotton, or Sabretooth, whatever his real name is, can't think of it.
Liev Schreiber.
Yeah. He died in the first 5 minutes.
He was the opening segment.
Yeah, so it's not like, his character is really needed for the movie, but it's just kind of like interesting because they kind of started the movie off like, okay, well, he was kind of the hero of the second movie, and now he's dead. So you kind of thought that the movie, because I hadn't watched this movie in a long time previous to watching it the other day. So it kind of gave you that feeling that maybe anybody was up to die. But then once the movie started, like you knew that pretty much Dewey, Gail, and Sydney were going to live.
Yeah, because you had the video that showed up of Randy going into the rules for the third movie being a trilogy. And in that video, he says, that anybody can go, even the main character. But it's like, well, no, they're not going to do that. And I he said the second one they killed Randy, who was a main character that people loved. And the third one, they opened it up by killing Cotton, who was one of the main characters in the second movie. Mm-hmm. And it still doesn't make sense to me when you find out who the killer is, that he couldn't have beat that guy's ass, but whatever.
Well, I think the only thing you can say is he did get beat up he did get hit this girlfriend by the bat. So you could probably argue, well, he got a little beat up from his girlfriend with the bat before. Because remember, they had the voice changer in this movie, which is superior than any of the other voice changers in the prior movies because they can then mimic anybody's voice, even if they are dead, because he mimics Sydney's mom's voice. However the hell he would have got a hold of that,
Yeah, well, and two, one thing that we should mention that kind of drove me crazy, and it's, part of, just being done for the fact that it's a movie and it reminds me of the Batman movies and stuff in this regard, in the beginning of the movie when the Ghostface killer is about to kill Cotton, it gets the voice changer out and says something. It's like, you're about to kill the dude. He's not going to know who you are or even be able to tell anybody. Just kill his ass. It's just like how Batman used the Batman voice when he's talking to himself.
Yeah, that's a good
Batman,
point.
you need to do this. Does he talk to himself in the third person?
Batman's horny.
Batman's horny.
Show me the boobs.
No, I just think that, like, I almost, if you had to just make me have one word to describe this movie, I would probably say unnecessary. Because, like, nothing about it made me feel like that it was needed. Because it just got, like, the plot essentially was the main killer or the killer wanted, because the mom wouldn't acknowledge him because she apparently was sleeping around with other people, that he was the one that killed the mom, and I guess he wanted the fame for it or whatever, and it just too convoluted, and
they do kind of try to start stepping over the story, just stepping on their own toes, trying to explain things away past part 2, I think. Because 2, it's like, okay, well, we'll give you that, and then 3 with this, and then 4.
Well, like like with 2, it's like, at least that's like, I understand 2, because like essentially Loomis's mom just wanted revenge for her son, so it's like essentially that's like the premise for the original Friday the 13th, although maybe a little more directly than that, because she actually is going to kill the person that killed her son. But like with this one, it was just too much. It's like, this guy went through all this trouble, for what? I just, it kind of lost me a little bit on it, and it just, it was, like I said, it was almost too smart, or tried to be something more than it really was, and it just kind of made me not like it as much as the previous two.
It fell in the trap of being meta and not the right ways, not to where it makes it clever. It just kind of, it's trying to be too cute sometimes, but, this isn't worth anything, but I feel like they at least tried at some points. But yeah, they definitely slip into just turning into kind of a normal slasher film. Like William said, the films it's trying to deconstruct, it kind of turns into basically just one of those for the most part.
Which is kind of sad, just seeing how original the first one was definitely, and the second one still lived up, I think, what the first one set up. And the third one, like I said, they just changed. They just tried, I don't know, it just seemed like they tried too hard, but not trying enough. I don't know if that makes sense. It's just like they tried so hard to make something else out of the franchise, and it just didn't seem to work.
I think, too, part of the series' strength and weakness is that the Ghostface killer is a different person in each movie. So in the first movie, the Ghostface killer, like, the reveal of it was effective, and I think it made sense and was enjoyable. The second movie, I like the way they went with that, with Mickey, wanting to blame it on violent movies and taking an approach just to kind of poke at the way that media was portraying movies and games and things at the time. Because, that was in the era, like when, shortly thereafter when Columbine happened, people were blaming Doom and movies and stuff. So,
and she even says, Roseanne's sister, she's like, she's referencing Timothy Oliphant. She said, his way, he's going to blame movies. She said, mine's not as 90s as his. Mine's just good old-fashioned revenge. They kind of call back to that.
Yeah, and then the killer in the third movie, I think, is the least, like we said, it kind of retcons the first movie and makes it retroactively have less impact. And then I think that's also why in the next movie they didn't really talk about that plot point at all. But it's just the killer himself, I didn't find that compelling. There were some cool kills, and it had once again, it had a good supporting cast. Patrick Warburton's in it, who's always great in everything he does.
Yeah. What does he call him? What does he call Dewey?
Dewdrop.
Dewdrop. Hey, Dewdrop.
Dewdrop. So you have him and Parker Posey, and actually Jay and Silent Bob make a cameo in this movie.
Yeah, they do.
Which isn't Wes Craven and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back?
I have not seen that movie in like 5 years. But
yeah, they're actually on a studio lot in that film. And I think they're on the set of maybe Scream, and they look over, and I think Wes Craven's counting money.
Oh,
which they're both this Dimensions films, so it's kind of bounced back and forth. That was probably shot at the same time, 2000.
Yeah, I think Jane Silent Bob was 2001, so it was probably shooting around the same time.
Yeah.
One other thing too, though, is this is the first of the series that did not reference Freddy Krueger in it. Because I forgot to say in the second one, when I believe it's when Sydney is in a room toward the beginning of the movie, she's getting some out of her closet and she has a sweater that heavily resembles Freddy Krueger's sweater.
Yeah.
And this one doesn't reference Freddy Krueger at all.
Well, in this one too, so the prior two, they definitely reference a ton of horror movies and talk about sequels and stuff like that. This one, it felt like it referenced itself more, like the mythology of the movies than horror in general.
Well, because that was the third Scream movie, and in that movies they were in the third Stab movie. And like I said, then the whole entire plot of like the killer killing people according to the script, and to me it just got a little too cheeky and just kind of made me lose a little bit of interest, because like it kind of had the Die Hard syndrome where like all the characters become, any of the main characters at this point become mythological. Like you knew Gale wasn't dying, you knew Dewey wasn't dying, and you knew that Sydney wasn't going to die.
We should say too that Patrick Dempsey was in this as a cop.
Yeah.
But he was kind of a puss in this because you got the shit beat out of him.
Yeah, and they set it up where you thought that he was the killer.
Yeah.
But, I think we can all agree that, this movie by no means is terrible. It doesn't feel up to the standards of the first two. And it feels more like, like Sean said, just sum it up in one word. Mine's not only one word. It's just, the one phrase I would say that describes this movie is self-congratulatory. They kind of give themselves a pat on the back, like they've established this mythos.
Yeah.
You could say that's not dog trash, but
yeah.
It has some good scenes in it. David Arquette's really funny for the most part. Like I like their relationship, him and Courtney Cox. Like there's good stuff to it, but and Parker Posey's awesome in it. But at the same time, it's just you're kind of enjoying these actors and these moments they have, not really the whole structure of it on the whole, as much as the other two films.
Yeah, and it's got Jenny McCarthy in it.
Yeah,
who doesn't believe against vaccinating yourself for stab wounds? So that backfired on her spectacularly. But like once again, the series just has a great supporting cast. I will say that some of the movie within the movie, the Stab actors who are portraying the various characters, like the Dewey guy, like they were a little bit weaker characters that you really didn't care about.
Yeah, they're kind of forgettable.
Oh, one thing too, I should say that I don't know if we mentioned this at all. So in Scream 2, the Stab movie that was a recreation of the events from Scream, and the movie is directed by Robert Rodriguez, and actually in that period of time, I would have loved to have seen Robert Rodriguez take on a slasher movie, because that was not too long after Dusk Till Dawn, Desperado, like when he was kind of in the prime of his career.
And he did The Faculty right around that time, and that was very much felt like a sci-fi version of the high school horror film,
Yeah, because you have like a lot of movies in that era, The Faculty. I would say I Know What You Did Last Summer, but it was also written by Williamson, who wrote Scream, so that kind of gets a pass for being a knockoff. It's just more similar because similar talent involved in creating it.
Wait, what movie did you say?
I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah, well, I just looked at Faculty's written by Kevin Williamson, too.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
The Faculty is actually a really good
film. Yeah, it is.
So that era, that's why those movies feel like, but I think those are also, not terrible.
Not dog trash.
Like, I Know What You Did Last Summer is okay. I haven't watched it in a while. It definitely wasn't up to Scream standards.
Isn't Freddie Prinze Jr. in that?
Yeah. And
I hate him.
Ryan Felipe and Jennifer Love Bubit. Or Bubit. The Ghost Whisperer. But part of it is just, I think in the Scream series, you had Wes Craven to balance out everything, and who came to it versus other movies weren't as well established directors tackling them. Aside from like The Faculty with Robert Rodriguez, but apparently he's gone to trash lately, making Sin City 2 and Shark Boy and Lava Girl, and
yeah, I kind of fell off that Robert Rodriguez train. I haven't seen anything he's done recently. I didn't even see Machete actually, which I know I probably should, but
I like the trailer more than the movie.
Yeah. He's another. He seems like to be self-congratulating himself. Not to say he's not a talented guy, but it's one of those things where he's almost so aware of the ideas that he's not making a good movie. He's worried about everything else surrounding it.
Well, I think
technology, kind of the toys and
a lot of these filmmakers have a similar ideology to their writing as Family Guy. And Family Guy, simply referencing something is the joke or the point. Like just referencing 50 things without any context or any, parody of it or any. It's just, here's Star Wars. Here's a chicken.
That is Robert Rodriguez's, technique on even, this is a perfect parallel is Grindhouse. That's his Planet Terror was that style. And then, Tarantino's Death Proof, I felt very much he took a higher ground with that film than what he was doing with it.
I think Tarantino made a Grindhouse movie, and Robert Rodriguez made his approximation of one.
Yeah.
Which is, I liked Planet Terror. It was entertaining.
Yeah. I liked it too. It was one of those where it kind of felt like one of those B movies where you just go in, watch it, enjoy it, and then you kind of forget about it. Yeah. Or Death Proof, for me, it's like, I love that. I know a lot of people, that kind of the point where some people kind of, Tarantino turned them off, but that's one of my favorite Tarantino films. Mainly it's because of the car chase, and I know, because Zoe Bell was the actress, just the way he handled that, her doing all the same stunts.
Well, one thing I too though appreciate about the Scream movies is like the first two technically should have been like, the first two to me never felt like a B horror movie. Like while I'm sure you could probably almost categorize them as along the lines of that, they never because of the cast in it, it just felt like the third one. I'll tell you, the third one felt more like a B horror movie. I know like the casting was still good, but it just came off cheesy. Where the first two just had a little bit different feel and maybe were a little more polished. Where the third one just kind of felt like
a studio making a sequel of a popular horror franchise.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. So it just, you kind of came out like, I don't know, like when I watch a movie, it just felt cheap,
But just like all those other horror franchises, by that point, you like the characters in the franchise so much that you kind of let a lot of things slide and let them get a little bit lazy and still just kind of,
so
enjoy it.
Talking about sequels, now we can go into 2011's Scream 4. In this movie, according to IMDb, 10 years have passed, and Sidney Prescott, who's put herself back together and thanks in part to her writing, is visited by the Ghostface Killer. And this movie, it's kind of funny to me because the characters in the movie kind of reflect the actors in real life. I think like Neve Campbell wasn't in part 3 as much because she kind of wanted to distance herself from the franchise and, venture into being more of a, Hollywood actress who wasn't just in horror movies.
Yeah, like Wild Things.
Yeah. Which, there's some good scenes in that movie. That movie has death scenes too. And like Wild Things is one of those movies from the era that I think his entire intention was to shock or to go over the top more so than actually prove a point. But Scream 4, it's kind of funny that all these actors came back to the franchise because their careers didn't go quite the way they envisioned.
Yeah.
And the movie even kind of plays on that, on, Gail's character and Dewey and Sydney. They all didn't get quite to where they wanted to go.
Yeah.
And Gail's character in particular is just sad. And once again, Dewey is a police, he's the sheriff now, and he's just terrible at his job. And, once again, the casting in this movie is great. Because you have, like we said before, Anthony Anderson's a cop. They're like the teens.
Hayden Panettiere. Who else you got? You got tons of people in this.
You got the amazing Allison Brie is in it.
Mm-hmm. Anna Paquin, she's, popular.
Yeah, Kristen
Bell.
And it's
if you think about it, these movies have always been able to get a very star-studded cast almost. Surprisingly a good amount of known actors for horror movies, And that's something I really do. That's one thing, even though I'm not as big as fans of 3 and 4 as I am 1 and 2, you still have to give them credit because they can always get like known people to get in these movies.
And two, like, this movie deals once again with the legacy and is somewhat more, it's still kind of in that self-congratulatory mode of referencing the prior movies a ton. But this one definitely brings back the horror references that were kind of missing from part 3.
Yeah.
And in some ways it feels a bit ham-fisted because there's the part where Hayden Panettiere's character she has to answer a question. Her character Kirby has to answer a question, and she's just shouting out like every horror character ever. And it's like,
or she shouts out the recent horror remakes.
Yeah,
which I kind of liked. There's some other parts that but it's just funny. Like she's going on for so long, and you're like, shit, those are all remakes that have been made in the past like 5 years at the time of when this movie came out.
And to kind of go back into the voice changer stuff. So in this, there's the app that everyone uses. And first off, everybody's using iPhones. And I don't know what version of the iPhones they have, but are there even apps that exist that let you change your voice in a phone call? I don't think you're allowed to do that. Like, I don't think that they allow apps to tap into the dialer. So maybe everybody's phones are jailbroken and they're using some like custom apps. I don't know. I mean, it makes about as much sense as the voice changers that let you have anyone's voice.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
But, and this movie even has a line, too, about you can't die in a horror film if you're gay. And then this guy gets stabbed, and he's like, but I'm gay. So there's, more meta references and rules that, get brought up.
One thing that we should have brought up, and I'm glad you brought that up, was in Jamie Kennedy's part in the third one where he's had his, death movie. He's like, if you're seeing this movie, I'm probably dead. So I probably should have lost my virginity. Like, I just really love that reference. Because, in the first one, he's talking about you had to be a virgin to live through it. And then what I really love, too, is the girl that brought in the video is the girl he lost his virginity to. And the guy's like, oh, you had sex with her?
That was her sister. That's his sister.
It was a sister. Okay, well, whoever it was, whenever he was having sex with the girl, they're like, oh, you had sex with her? And he's like, well, we were alone in the movie store at night. I was like, he has to defend himself in that. And that's why, I think they greatly lost out by killing his character because he was so good. But,
he could have really used the money in 2011 after the failure of Son of the Mask.
Oh my God!
What if they had pulled out a video that he filmed at the same time as that one? He's like, okay, if a third time it happened and you survived, here's the rules for the fourth one. All the main characters live, and they're too afraid at this point to change the status quo because part 3 made promises that anyone was at risk, and in this movie, up until the last 5-10 minutes, it made it seem as if they were willing to gut the main cast and kill people to kind of to bring the franchise around. But then at the very end, they course corrected, went right back to the formula, and I think that's part of why it didn't do so hot at the box office.
Yeah, I just think I understand you have this is kind of like uncharted territory for a horror franchise to have in your fourth movie. While you still have people portraying the Ghostface killer, it's always someone different. And you have the same cast member, but at a certain point, it's you're just rehashing the same thing because you have an expendable cast that they're going to die, and then you have your core group of cast members who will then live. And it's they do where you get some type of suspense that they might kill one of the main characters, and they don't die. So at some point, it almost no longer feels like a horror movie. It just kind of almost feels like an action movie with a lot of suspense in it.
Yeah. And like I said, though, at the time, watching this movie again, I didn't like it as much as I remember it. I was still fine with it. But when it came out in theaters, I was a little hotter on it only because I had loved those original films. And I was so glad they were just making another one. And, Wes Craven was directing. The original cast was back. And I was hoping they would do something inventive with it. And it was this kind of pinging off all the remakes that had been coming out recently. So I really did think that they were going to kill off the cast and kind of start this new franchise. And I was totally ready for that. I'm like, good, let's do something fun and more inventive. And even though it was pretty meta and they talked about a lot of that stuff, they really didn't live up to it. Yeah. And I almost wonder if the right direction to go with this film was to have made an actual remake. You know what I mean? And I don't know how they would have handled it, but to almost make a remake of Scream and somehow bring out a whole new twist on the whole thing.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with you on that. I mean, because at some point, in order to advance the plot or just advance the story, you almost had this goal. It almost make more sense to just revamp it, just scrap
wipe
everything,
it clean,
wipe it clean, and start new. Because that way, you don't have characters that have been in 4 movies, and because I think once you let a character live through 4 movies, you can't really kill them. Like fans of the original franchise that have been your long-term fans will just be eternally mad at whoever did it. You have some people that love Dewey, or some people that love Sydney, or some people that love. So you can't really kill them at a certain point. But if you just wipe it clean.
Well, the only way you can kill a main character in a franchise is contractual obligations, which is what happened with Halloween and Halloween Resurrection when they killed Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, because she was contractually obligated to appear in the film. And when they made it apparent that it was just going to be a shit fest, they wrote her character out of the first few minutes of the movie. And this series, like, I almost think that if they had made the story get kicked into motion by something involving the original cast, like something that happened with them,
They all die in a van crash.
Put into motion something with a new group of teenagers, and then have the twist be that the killers succeed and go off to college, and then the second movie is them killing people at college.
Yeah.
Like, I think that would have been a more interesting turn than just, resetting it to the status quo.
Or they could really go for shock factor and have them kill people, have the killers be in middle school and kill middle schoolers and then go to high school. Yeah, I'm kidding, obviously, but that's never been done.
But at least, too, in this one, like we said in the first...
No, never mind. Sleepaway Camp, they kind of did that.
Yeah, that Sleepaway Camp was not a mainstream movie, though. But the cast in this one, like the first movie, everybody was, like 25 or 23 when they're making the movie. At least the cast in this one looked a little bit younger. A little bit more believably high school. Once again, there was the issue. I always have these movies. Could the killer, when it's revealed who the killer is, could they have actually accomplished everything that occurred? I don't know that either Emma Roberts or Rory Culkin could throw people off of, the build. Like, I don't know they could do that.
Well, hey, look.
Definitely not her.
Pamela Voorhees was chucking people through windows by herself, and she was like 50.
She had a catapult that no one saw that she just,
rolled
packed up
around.
It was like a rolly backpack with a catapult.
Now, this is something I'm surprised in you, William, that you did not bring this up. Every motherfucker in this franchise is rich, and they have these big-ass houses.
Yeah.
All of them.
That's the typical,
It's like, where the hell do these people... And first of all, like, and I know this is going all the way back to the first one, but they had this huge-ass house, and she's just in it by herself most of the time. And then they go to the party, and it's just these huge-ass houses. It's like... Where do these people live, and what do the families do in order for them to have these huge houses and say, hey, you know what? You high schoolers can do whatever you want to.
Well, and two, not to go back too far, but in the first movie, the last 45 minutes happen in one location. Mm-hmm. And I read that, like, in the production of the movie, it was called, like, Scene 118. And then, like, everybody made shirts when it was done saying, I survived Scene 118, because it took 21 days to film that.
Yeah, and I kind of like that, the big kind of climax of that film. It felt great, because it was so long and it wasn't boring, but it was just, there was a lot of tension throughout that entire last scene.
And two, just like this movie, more, technical things. So the goal of the two killers, which was Sydney's niece and the movie nerd, was to, after all the murders had occurred, to put all the video footage they recorded of it together and to put it online. But the thing that I don't know that they thought about was, if they already killed the guy they're going to blame the killings on, how could they upload the video and it not be odd that the killer was dead and the video appears edited with footage from his last kills?
Yeah.
Like too, I didn't really get the motivation as much for the killer. For Sydney's niece, I didn't really buy necessarily that she would do all that for the reasons she did.
It seemed like a typical little slasher, just kind of an excuse,
Yeah.
When there's like twist, killers revealed in stuff in the movie. It just seemed like a little excuse for it. And they feel like, I guess Sydney's the main character, but they feel like they've always got to make it part of the family, the reason the killer's after her,
Yeah, that's where I just kind of like the third and fourth one. I just kind of lost any kind of believability because I just don't see people going to those links to do what like in the first and second one. It just seems more like the first one's probably the most grounded. Then the second one's still more outlandish, but you can still understand like you said, line just revenge, And then you get to the third one where it's really at least the fourth one wasn't as convoluted,
Yeah.
Yeah.
One, two, it's just like you said, the movies. I think just the fourth movie kind of mirrored the careers of the actors. Coming back to this franchise for another round when they all thought that they could have outgrown it and become stars in their own right. And it was just somewhat fitting that at the end they kept them all alive.
It'd be kind of like having a Friday the 13th movie now with like Kevin Bacon in it, or like a new Nightmare on Elm Street and have Johnny Depp in it. Or,
I don't know. Johnny Depp does pretty much anything these days. Mordecai.
Has there ever been a Nicolas Cage based horror movie that wasn't The Wicker Man? When he was young,
or maybe not. No, I'm thinking of Kevin Bacon's. Thinking of a Kevin Bacon film, I think, from the 90s.
I remember him being the Invisible Man or something. But
Hollow
Man. Not that one. Not that one. Because I thought of that one too. This is killing me. I got to look it up.
But yeah, it's just like, I don't know. It'd be kind of almost interesting to like, I don't know, just see if he can get some of those people back to do horror movies. But yeah, I just think like in the fourth one, it was the least appealing of all of them that I watched.
Well, I think just the box office.
Real quick, Stir of Echoes was the Kevin Bacon film I was thinking of.
Yes.
Continue.
But the fourth one, the box office was the worst performing. It made about half of what the third one made. And I think part of it's just the Scream series kind of rejuvenated at least the slasher when it was released. And then by the third one, it kind of becomes somewhat of a parody of itself. And when in the third one, the original run was the lowest grossing of the first three. And then the fourth one, 10, 11 years later, I feel like all the influence of Scream have been felt through horror movies through the years. So for fresh audiences, it's like, well, this is just doing something that everything does now.
Yeah.
And then for fans of the original, I mean, it was nice to see those characters back, and I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
It wasn't on the same level as the first two.
No, no. I was very, when this came out, I was very excited to go see it in theaters. But again, like after watching it now again, it's not as good as I remember, but I think I was just kind of on that high of glad that they actually made another one and it was not a different cast or a different director or,
I think sometimes too, though, in these movies, like nostalgia hits you pretty hard and you like it the first time you watch it. And then like on repeat watchings, it's just like, meh. The first time you watch it, you're just so glad to see those people back doing what they were good at doing. And then, once you get a chance to rewatch it and actually really watch the movie, then you start thinking, oh man, maybe this really wasn't, like I think the perfect example, which we talked about before, is like Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. Like, I remember the first time I watched it, like, oh, it's pretty good. And then you watch it again, you're like, no, I was wrong. I think this movie had a little bit of that.
And it is rare in these franchises to see, in this day and age, to see the original talent come back together to do a horror franchise. You don't see that as much anymore. Mostly it's just reboots. And there's a Scream TV series coming up, which seems to be a reboot, or at least a relaunch. It doesn't have any of the original characters in it that we're aware of. And being that it's MTV budgets, I doubt they could afford anybody from the main series.
I really don't think that David Arquette
is
really doing anything that's groundbreaking at this moment. And Courtney Cox is just getting plastic surgery, so she probably needs money.
David Arquette is producing some game show on maybe CBS that
he needs money.
What's his name's hosting? Who just left his late night show? The guy that was on Drew Carey.
Craig Ferguson.
Yeah, Craig Ferguson hosted it because I saw him on some talk show and he was talking about coming to Derby and producing that show. So I think that's all he's doing right now.
Yeah, he needs work. He could come back and they could just kill his character in like one episode.
The Wikipedia entry, which I don't see where a reference is or any notation is listed to where this is coming from, but the TV show says a pilot starts with a YouTube video going viral, which soon leads to problems for teenager Audrey, who seemingly serves as the catalyst for a murder that opens up a window to the small town of Lakewood's troubled past. So Lakewood was the town they lived in, right?
No, it was Woodsboro. So
Woodsboro, yeah. So yeah, totally different.
And two, it's as least as far as everyone's been made aware through the information that's hit, the various movie sites and stuff. The show is not going to include the ghost face mask and costume as of yet.
Weird. Yeah.
So you've stripped away the characters, the location, and the killer's visual look. So why is it still called Scream? And the last one didn't set the world on fire at the box office, so it's not like it's a huge brand recognition.
That's what I was saying too. And to see like with MTV, your main focus is going to be middle school to high school age people, and you got to think that movie came out in 2011, so I just don't see it. Like name recognition's not going to carry because
another thing too is like I think I'm supposed to, or people know who they are, but I don't know who any of those actresses are in the Scream TV show. Because I don't think that's, I'm not the target audience for that at this point.
Because you're not a 17-year-old girl.
Yeah, but like all the Scream movies, like it's all these big names and all these from these films that I know and I've seen. Even when I was younger, I knew like, oh, this person's from this film or this person's from this film. But this just seems totally like it's going to lose me. Any type of self-referential nods to the actresses or the roles or who they are or anything at all. I feel like I'm going to be totally lost watching this show.
I feel like too, like the teaser trailer they released for this show has one of the characters saying that you can't do a slasher on a TV show. And in the original Scream series, when Randy describes things like that, like when he was giving like the fourth wall information, like I thought that was all very believable and realistic because I have had conversations with people like that.
Yeah,
I mean, that's very. But like in the delivery, at least in that trailer, was much more stilted and like they're just trying to go along by justifying the show by acting like they're going to skewer it.
Here's what you need to do. Clerks 3 meets Scream as a TV show, so Dante and Randall just discuss horror films in the shop, while people are getting murdered around town. And they can just discuss and deconstruct everything as it goes. And you keep cutting back to them like the beginning of the episode and the end of it. And that would be totally believable. That they would be hanging out in the Quick Stop Food Mart discussing horror films.
And two,
but not these teenage girls that, and not to be sexist or anything, but like I knew very few girls in high school. I knew a couple, but most of them weren't like huge into horror films that were like big horror buffs.
Well, and two, one thing that like just to take a slice of realism to this. So in the original Scream, there's like the high school murders where people die, and they make it into a film franchise, and kind of glorify it and everything. In real life, when school violence happens, like Columbine, Sandy Hook, of course, that was elementary school, which is, all this is terrible. That's even worse because even, very small children. When you have real life violence at schools like that or murders and stuff, typically it's not glorified like that. And if they make a movie, it's not a gory retelling of it. So, it's another thing further in real life. Like, I don't know that they would turn that stuff into movies, or at least in that same light.
And maybe that's all just kind of a criticism of media, which is almost criticizing the film industry itself, because they did poke fun at TV news so much in these films too. Gail Weathers' characters, they kind of, at the same time, they criticized and satirized her role in all of this as well.
Yeah, so I guess since we're kind of running along here, we can just kind of go around and just summarize our thoughts on the series, just kind of putting the movies in order of how we'd rank them. I guess I can start out. I mean, definitely the first one is number one. That's by far the best in the series. The number two. Then beyond that, 3 and 4, to me, it's kind of hard to separate them out. I think they're about equal. Like, I might give a slight edge to part 4, just because I like some of the supporting cast a lot. Because like anything Allison Brie's in, she's always like awesome. And then also we forgot to mention Adam Brody's in Scream 4, and he's usually funny in the things he shows up in. And Anthony Anderson. So I enjoyed part 4 more than part 3, but I don't think it's a better movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page with you, almost pretty much across the board. Like 1, loved it at the time, and every time I watch it, I love that movie. And it just hit right place, right time. And, I like that it kind of brought those things out that way. it kind of at least made people aware of this. So when they're making new films, they kind of step away from some of these tropes or try to be more creative. Like it actually try to, you know, I don't want to say try to make change, but it almost felt like it was trying to kind of push people to make a change in the way they made horror films. Since Wes Craven's obviously a huge fan of it, not only being somebody who's huge in the industry, but and 2, I liked 2 a lot. 3, I liked it when it came out. I still like it. 3 and 4, I still like. I like those films. I mean, I still think those are stronger than most all of the Friday the 13th films, to be honest. But yeah, but I'd watch any of these if they were on. I'd watch any of these films over and over if they were on TV at any point in time. I feel like it's a pretty strong horror franchise across the board. Even though 3 and 4 are a dip down, and I think I might give a little bit of edge to 4 over 3, but yeah, neither one of those are spectacular.
I'm gonna rank them 1 and 2, and then like 3 and 4. I really didn't like really either of them, so I'm just gonna put them like in a wash because while like I still think that, like you said, they're better than most other movies made at the time, they're just not what the first 2 were, and like you said, they almost became parodying them. Like everything that they made fun of or talked about in the original 2, they did in 3 and 4. So it kind of became like the bad horror movies that they talked about. So I mean, well, I think if you watch 1 and 2, you definitely you're not gonna like. I don't think you make a mistake by watching 3 or 4 because I still think they're still a step up above of a lot of the other movies of that time period or even ones coming out now. I just think that for what they could have been and what they were is just 2 different things.
Yeah. And all the films are funny, at least. Like I said, they've all got great casts. They're all funny.
Yeah, that's one thing you can give it. I mean, they have all of them have a good cast. Like, I kind of think my favorite cast was in 2, but I also like the cast in 1 a lot. But I still think my favorite was in 2 because I knew a lot more of those actors in 2 than I did in 1. And with 3, I think it had more of a mature cast than it had in the first 2, and that's maybe why I liked it a little less. Because I think that the cast in the first 2 were a little more fun. But yeah, I just have to go 1, 2. Like I said, 3 and 4 to me, neither of them stood out, and neither of them were that awful that I could say like, well, 4 is worse than 3 or 3 is worse than 4. I think they're about on the same level to me. So 1 and 2, and then like I said, 3 and 4 to me are just kind of a tie because they're just both kind of they're there and they are movies and you can watch them. But I wouldn't really be like, oh, you have to watch 3, you have to watch 4. They're just they're just there to me.
All right, so that's our feelings on the movies. If you have disagreements or think that we're completely wrong, you can let us know on the comments for this on the website, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Google Plus. I think these, because these go on YouTube, so they show up on Google Plus too. And we've actually gotten a few people commenting on the YouTube version of these podcasts, which is always good. We have a few people that have commented on our Friday the 13th discussion. And it's just, it's nice to get feedback on these because it's always hard to tell what, people like or don't like if nobody's saying anything. But that was our feelings on this franchise. And the next podcast, I think we're going to discuss Insidious 3 because that's a new movie coming out. And it's going to be in the same general wheelhouse as the last new release we saw, which is Poltergeist. So you can see how those compare. Because I thought that the first Insidious was a much better stab at that type of genre film than Poltergeist. Much scarier, just better, done movie. But we'll get to that next week. So as always, you can find all of our content on HouseWithAVideoStore.com, on our YouTube channel at HouseWithAVideoStore/YouTube, or YouTube. You just search for House by Video Store. Unless Fox decides to sue us out of existence.
Yeah, so definitely keep up with the site because like the past 2 weeks' content are not on YouTube now. So they're on the website instead. Yeah, and then you can, like as always, find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Vine. We haven't posted anything recently, but we have an account. And then if you want to find what we're doing on the internet, you can find me on Twitter at Will_Droid. And I'm at BlevinSean. And I think all those links are also on our website, possibly.
Yeah, all the social media ones are on House by Video Store.
Mm-hmm. And then Derek, you're on Instagram, right?
Yeah, Instagram quite a bit. Mine's Metal World Derek.
And then, as always, if you enjoyed the podcast, you can always go over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating and good comments. And if you think we deserve 4 stars, go ahead and do it. 3 stars. If you want to give some fleshed out discussion of things we could improve, that actually
go right
helpful.
ahead. Yeah.
But if you want to give us, 2 or 1 stars, and just say things like "you suck,"
Don't.
I mean, it's your, this is America. You can do that.
You're free to do as you want.
But then we can come on the podcast and say you suck, and
So we're kind of Jay and Silent Bob it, and just
we're gonna make you eat our shit, then shit that shit out, and eat the shit that you just shit of our shit. And
by the way, this podcast is explicit, so
yeah, because when you set it up in iTunes,
you made it this far. Don't let your kids listen anything before it.
Well, when you set it up in iTunes, you have to say if it's gonna be explicit from the beginning. And so you go ahead and just take advantage of it if it's explicit, because what's the point of marking yourself explicit if you don't use curse words?
And we're not Captain America. We're not going to say dang it and gosh darn.
I thought we were done with the Avengers reference.
We are.
But this podcast, I think there's been other ones where we had slightly more deranged topics. I think it was on the It Follows one. Corey was talking about having sex with a monkey. Not him personally, just
in general.
Yeah.
Were we talking about what were we talking?
We were talking about how to get rid of the curse.
Well, actually, it started off with having sex with a bird, and then it went to a monkey.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
Or
well,
like some type of animal that'd be hard to capture.
but you need to,
so listen to that podcast if you're into that type of thing.
that's actually, I think, our most popular podcast. So, and it's completely based on the monkey sex comments and the bird sex.
The monkey and the bird sex.
Although
And William hated the Asian population for a little while too. He decided
no, I was just saying
unleash the follows on Asia.
No, I was just simply stating that Japan is very far away from America, and that was just a location that, for some reason, I said that once, so I just stuck with that.
Yeah, because you'd have to theoretically, if you did that, have to travel, a multitude of miles to get there. So
yeah, so
The director did say it could get on airplanes, though.
no,
well, shit.
I read that. Yeah, I read that. He said no, it can get on airplanes and everything. So
then you need to go to sub-Saharan Africa, where you have to get there by Jeep or something.
Why don't you just find somebody that was doing deep sea research, and have sex with them right before, or an astronaut, and then good luck getting there.
yeah.
All right, yeah. So we don't want to spoil It Falls if you haven't seen it yet,
But there is a space scene.
There is. It's similar to, what was the 007 movie where they're in space?
Moonraker.
Yeah, it's just like Moonraker. It's a pretty good scene.
All right, so as always, you can find all of our work on houseofvideostore.com. Thanks for listening.
House by the Video